It's the 4th and Goal broadcast, Sunday Night Spectacular with Chris, aka the GOAT, and with David, of course. How you doing tonight, David?
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday Night Spectacular. I am ready to go and talk some football. Second week of free agency has come to a conclusion. The last big signing, Bobby Wagner, returning to Seattle. But as always, our national nightmare begins the show as we'll talk about Aaron Rodgers not being traded yet to the New York Jets, Chris.
We're still waiting. I mean, most likely it's probably going to be right before the draft. That's the way it's looking. It's looking like it could happen draft night at this point, or it might not happen at all. To be honest, it's kind of crazy, because go ahead.
I think it's going to happen. I think it'll happen between now and the draft. I don't expect it to wait till draft day. I think that they have both teams have a lot riding on this. Green Bay wants those picks, whatever the picks may be. They need them in the draft so that they can use them this year. And, they don't want to have to wait to get the picks for next year. And then, I'm sure they have no intention of him playing for them this season. And so, that's just where we're stuck right now. So, we're waiting for that, deal to be made. And until then, everybody else is just going to have to move on and look at other situations that are going on. And of course, the next one is Lamar Jackson. He hasn't signed his franchise tender. He hasn't gotten any nibbles at all. I watched the New Heights podcast with the Kelsey brothers. They got a portion of their show that's called New News. This is called No News. We have no news on Aaron Rodgers. We have really no news on Lamar Jackson, other than he's trying to get people that are not official representatives to go out there and try and make deals for him, and drum up some business so somebody will sign him to an offer sheet, because he doesn't want to hire an agent.
Lamar Jackson, I mean, you have to wonder at this point, is he shaking in his boots yet? I mean, it's been how long since he could talk to a team? And there's not even one team that I think has even had a conversation with him at this point. So here you are as sitting there thinking you're going to get all this money. It's going to be easy peasy. And your own team has told you straight up they're not doing it. And no other team in the league has even called you. I mean, make it make sense at this point.
I think he really thought that there was going to be a market out there. He thought there would be 4 or 5 teams and there'd be a bidding war for his services. But because of the injuries, because of, the want for a guaranteed contract. Oh, I don't want a guaranteed contract. Yes, you do. That's the reason all of this began in the beginning, is he wants a long-term guaranteed contract, and no team is willing to give him one, including the Baltimore Ravens.
Do you see, now here's the $1 million question. Do you see Lamar actually changing his whole mind on this whole thing and just agreeing with the contract to be done with it?
I'm under the impression that if he doesn't get some sort of a deal that is to his liking, I don't think he's going to play this season. I don't think that he cares whether he doesn't have an agent. He's going to get what he thinks he's got coming. I don't think that they're going to back him into a corner. I think the smartest thing would be, and he's not going to take my advice. He ain't taking anybody's advice. I said in a post already that I thought that, the Players Association should have got involved and helped him hire an agent, because this is drawing out and it's a bad look.
This is a very bad look. I mean, if he sits out, we all see what happened to Bell. I mean, does he really think he's going to be able to sit out a whole season and then just come back in and dominate the league? That's my question, because Bell thought the same thing too, and he actually stuck to his guns and didn't play. How long did he last in the league? Maybe 3 years after, maybe? And he couldn't even work out with the Jets when the Jets were a bad team. And that should speak volume.
I mean, I just don't know what he seems to think he's going to accomplish at this point. I don't think he's getting very good advice from anybody. I think it's been bad advice from the beginning. Your mom is not an agent. You cannot be involved in the contracts when you are not the best player at your position. Okay? You're not the best player at your position. Laramie Tunsil is the best left tackle in football. That's why he can negotiate his own contract. Okay? And he's not looking for a fully guaranteed deal. He's not looking to set precedent, throughout the quarterback market. And so, I think that this is just there's a lot of ego involved. And at one point in time, I thought, and, we can bring this up for, briefly, because the first team we're going to highlight tonight is the New York Jets. I thought that if there was a chance that they actually wasn't going to go through with the trade, they were asking for too much from Aaron Rodgers, that Lamar Jackson would be the backup plan for the New York Jets. But I don't think that's going to come through either.
No, they're losing. They're losing options if they don't get Rodgers, unless they're going to be the team that's going to step up to the plate and give Lamar the money. But then you're but then again, that's the Jets would have to commit to Lamar over Wilson, which, they hope that Wilson will shut his mouth and learn from Aaron Rodgers, because they would only deal with Aaron Rodgers for 2 years. But you go with Lamar Jackson, now you got to try to get what you can get for Wilson at this point, which I don't think that's much.
Yeah. Well, let's move on here and let's talk about the first team that we wanted to highlight tonight, and that is the New York Jets. The New York Jets this season, here in the offseason, I should say, have I don't know what's going on here. I thought I hit the right thing. Are you seeing a bunch of different stuff?
Yeah.
Well, it's supposed to be just that one. Anyway,
There you go.
They traded, for safety Chuck Clark from the Baltimore Ravens. And, of course, the trade is pending with Aaron Rodgers. But they re-signed a couple of the players that are pretty good on their team, especially Solomon Thomas, their fullback Nick Bodden. They got Ty Johnson and Adam Pankey, who are, I would say, pretty much backup players, but they're depth players. But they're going to have themselves a new look offense this year, especially if they get Aaron Rodgers. They've signed Alan Lazard, his buddy from the Green Bay Packers. They bring in Mecole Hardman on a 1-year deal, from the Kansas City Chiefs. Tristan Colon and Wes Schweitzer, for depth on the offensive line. One of them may end up being a starter. And then, they got Quincy Williams comes in, and then a new punter in Thomas Morstead. Did I lose you?
No, I'm here. Sorry, I
Is the
was.
screen still showing what it's supposed to show?
Oh no, it's back on you, buddy.
Okay, well, I lost the screen. If you lose me, say something.
No, I still got you loud and clear. You're coming.
All right. Well, as long as you can see me, that's good enough. My screen went blank. I think that the New York Jets are really looking to make a splash this year. They want to be contenders. They want to be winners. We've seen what kind of defense they had last year. Their special teams were actually pretty good. Now, they let Braxton Berrios walk in the offseason and go to the Miami Dolphins. He was their primary kick returner. But, they put some weapons around Aaron Rodgers. They already had Garrett Wilson. They're going to get Breece Hall back at running back. And then they've got Michael Carter and Zonovan Knight. So they've got themselves a few running backs on the roster. I expect them to be able to run the football good as long as Hall comes back at full strength from that injury. And, they're going to pass it good with Aaron Rodgers as long as he can get some protection. And I think that's what these offensive linemen were there for.
Yeah. They're going to have their defense was number 1 in the league this year. This past season. They finished on a high note. Their offense is there. They just need a QB. Like I said before, if this trade goes through and Aaron makes it to the Jets, they're going to make the playoffs. They're going to give the AFC East a run for their money. But the question is, can he get past the Chiefs in the playoffs?
Right.
That's the question. I mean, I guess on the brighter side, Aaron Rodgers don't have to worry about the 49ers in the playoffs because we all know what happens when he plays those guys. But that's the $1 million question is how far can they go? Like, how good will they be if Aaron Rodgers truly goes there? Can they compete with Buffalo in the playoffs? Can they compete with Kansas City in the playoffs? Or is it just going to be one and done?
Yeah, I mean, the AFC is stacked for sure. We're going to talk about Miami really soon here and the things that they have done. But just looking at the other elite quarterbacks in the AFC, you start with Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. Josh Allen was the MVP favorite going into last year, with the Buffalo Bills. But they faltered down the stretch. You've got Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. Justin Herbert is on the rise, and Trevor Lawrence was outstanding the longer the year went this last year for Jacksonville. So, I mean, you've got yourself a bunch of really good young gun quarterbacks. I mean, we haven't even said anything yet about Deshaun Watson. Now that he came back and played, Cleveland was kind of down in the doldrums this year. They weren't expected to do much because of the whole quarterback shuffling around. But now he's going to have a full off season under his belt, same coaching staff, same, offensive playbook, now they're probably going to lose Kareem Hunt in free agency to somebody, but they still got Nick Chubb. They've added some wide receivers here. And, Cleveland's going to be dangerous. I think Pittsburgh, which is another team that we're going to be looking at going forward, you can't overlook a lot of these teams. The AFC is just stacked in almost every division except for probably the AFC South.
Yeah. The AFC South is probably the worst one because wait a minute, who's on the AFC South one more time?
Okay, so you've got Jacksonville won the division. Tennessee's on the downfall. They're looking to trade Derrick Henry. Now, the Indianapolis Colts have the 4th pick, and they're probably going to take a quarterback, but they brought in Gardner Minshew, And if they've got Jonathan Taylor back at full speed at running back, the defense really let them down last year. I think the change from Matt Eberflus over to Gus Bradley did not work out for them at all. On top of the fact that Darius Leonard, Shaq Leonard, he goes by now, was basically hurt all season long. Now they did have a revelation in Zaire Franklin, but they weren't getting any help at all defensively. And Indianapolis really took a beating because of it this last year, and that's why they're picking fourth.
Yeah. No, I mean, it all depends on who's their quarterback in Indianapolis. They could, I mean, because they got a decent defense, they got a decent offense. They just have no quarterback play. Jacksonville, I think, is the clear winner of that division, though. I'm curious on.
Yeah, I feel that way too.
But I'm curious on what's going on with the Titans. I want to know where's Henry going to go?
The best place that I saw, and I'm not sure they want to trade him to the AFC, if they can get a hold of him, it's Buffalo. Man, if they can get a hold of Derrick Henry, but I don't know if they got the salary cap room. There have been rumors that he's one of the teams that he's interested in going to. But, we just got to wait and see at this point because I think it's probably likely, unless he stays in Tennessee for some reason, even though they've been shopping him, I would think that would bruise his ego a little bit. We're going to see him get traded between now and the end of the first day of the draft.
Yeah. So I'm totally sorry. I was just finishing sharing the broadcast. What team did you actually say, Henry?
Buffalo Bills.
That's where I heard.
Yeah.
But what do they want in return? And can Buffalo? And here's the thing: can Buffalo afford his contract? Because if I'm not mistaken, Henry's on a wealthy contract. Am I right?
I don't know. I don't know how much more time he has on his contract. But I tell you what, here's what I'm going to do real quick because I'm having a technical difficulty with my screen. I'm going to reboot real quick and I'll be right back.
Okay.
If you go ahead and talk about some of the other free agent moves that have happened this week. Then like I said, I'll be right back. You can talk about Detroit or whoever you want to talk about real fast.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
No problem. All right, let's give David a minute to reboot his computer and get back in the meeting. So we're going to talk a little about Detroit until he gets back. So I've been hearing a lot of talk about Lions fans and quarterback. Obviously, the Lions re-signed Nate Sutherfield. I know I've seen a lot of posts, people complain about it. I don't think it's a bad move because what I'm thinking we're going to draft Hooker or maybe Bennett from Georgia because I feel like both those guys could fall in the later rounds. Just for the fact that they're 25 years old. I don't think a lot of teams are willing to make them their franchise QB right off the bat. But if I do know this, if Lamar's situation is not handled by the draft, Baltimore could snag Bennett if they still need a quarterback. Their offensive coordinator is his former offensive coordinator down in Georgia. So, I mean, he knows his offense. He probably has the best chance of being a starter at 25 years old coming in the draft after spending so long in college. But other than that, Hooker's going to drop. He tore his ACL. He's 25. Not a lot of teams are going to want him in the first couple rounds anyway. Now, somebody might take a chance on him in the 4th, 5th round, maybe 6th. So that's what I think what's going to happen with the Lions. I think the Lions might draft Bennett or they might get Hooker in the draft. And then you got them as the third string quarterback for a year. Let them learn the offense. Nate's deal's a 1-year deal. They take over as the backup QB to Goff. And then just because this, you got to think of this way, just say something happens with Goff, you still have an experienced quarterback. So say Goff leaves Detroit or don't have a good year, and Detroit has to draft another starting QB in the draft. It is what it is at that point, because you could still start Hooker or Bennett, wherever one you get, for a year. At that point, after they sit back and learn the offense, if you get in that situation where you might have to move on from Goff, they would be a perfect field guy. They both have experience of playing the game at a high pace. Obviously college is not NFL level. We all know this, but being 25 years old and playing, for extra years in college is going to make you a little bit better than average QBs. It's just, I think the problem now is it's the age. It's more the age than anything, because, are you a quarterback? I mean, as a general manager, now, do you want to take a chance on someone that's 25 for your franchise QB because he's 25? So that means he needs to, if you draft one of those QBs in the top rounds, you got to play him at that point, or you're wasting incredible years to your franchise, because you're losing playing time. Most of these young QBs come in the league, 21, 20, no older than 22. So you're losing 2 to 3 years of pro level play. And what happens in QBs, once these QBs have a good season, they all want this, they all want the big bucks. So I think Detroit's being smart. Even though half of the fan pages are crying Lamar Jackson, I mean, look at the whole league. The whole league is not jumping on Lamar Jackson. There's reasons. No one's paying somebody $200 million guaranteed if you can't stay healthy. You've already had knee injuries. You've already missed back-to-back seasons. You weren't available in the playoffs. I mean, I understand you want to get paid and you should get a pay raise. There's nothing wrong with that, but Detroit ain't the place for Lamar. So if you're one of these Lions fans who think the Lions should get Lamar, you're crazy. Look at the stats. Type in Goff stats versus Lamar Jackson stats. They're literally identical, and Goff has the edge and the better numbers as a quarterback. So if you're one of those Lions fans, preaching, getting mad because we re-signed Nate Sutherfield and we didn't go get Lamar Jackson, knock it off. Go do the numbers, do the research. It's a bad move. We got David back, so we're going to pick up where we left off, why he had to reboot his computer. We're sorry for the inconvenience.
I don't know what it is. Whenever I share some of our graphics, sometimes it goes crazy, and I apologize for that. We were going to move on to the Miami Dolphins as our next team to spotlight. And let's see if I can make it work here without it going apeshit. Okay. The Miami Dolphins have made a lot of moves, particularly right now in, free agency, but they've re-signed a lot of their players coming off their best season in several years. They made the playoffs. Everybody knows they activated the 5th-year option on Tua. They traded for cornerback Jalen Ramsey and sent like their second or third, tight end, to the Rams. They re-signed their running back trio in Mostert and Wilson and Gaskin, their fullback John Lovett, wide receiver River Craycraft, who I think was maybe like a practice squad player, but they gave him a longer than a 1-year deal, so I think he may be moving into a position where He's not going to be on the practice squad anymore. Offensive line, Jaron Christian. Linebackers, Alex Van Ginkel and Duke Riley. You've got, defensive back Justin Bethel. And then the free agent pickups. They're worried about Tua. We're all worried about Tua. The concussions and such. Mike White comes over from the Jets. I think that with the weapons they have, if Tua goes down, Mike White can keep things going. I think he's a pretty good player. What do you think, Chris? Do you like Mike White as the backup here in Miami?
I think it's smart because, let's be honest. He didn't look horrible for the Jets. You know what I'm saying? I think the Jets are probably shaking in kind of shaking in their boots right now because Mike White left.
Yeah.
Mike White left. And, they were kind of in the back of their heads, they were kind of counting on him to stick around because they're like, if they didn't get Rodgers, they would have another option if Wilson wasn't still working out, and going until next season. Now they don't got that. And now Mike White's with Miami, which honestly benefits them because for some reason, if Tua can't stay healthy, Mike White can step in that, and I think he can sling the ball. They have one of the best wideout cores, if not the best wideout core in the NFL. Let's be real. Waddle Hill and all that speed. You got a backup quarterback that can actually throw the ball.
Yeah.
So if Tua's not there, I think that's a huge signing for him.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to go out on a limb when I say this, but that Jalen Ramsey trade, we all know, I said on this broadcast, I was hoping the Lions pulled it off. Didn't work out. I'm okay with it. We actually did great in free agency. I believe we're one of the best teams in free agency right now with the moves we made. So I have no complaints, but I'll tell you right now, that defense was good last year. That defense has got scary. Now they're in a better position because now they got a defense that can keep games at low-scoring games on the other side of the ball.
Yeah.
So if Mike White does have to step in, he's not just getting backed by a great wide receiver core or a great offense, a coordinator and calls. He's got the back of he got backup with that defense because that defense is going to be able to get stuff done and get them back on the field, So I think this is probably one of the smartest years I've ever seen Miami have as a franchise. And I'm not trying to, sound harsh on them by any means. It's just, I feel for the last few years, they've tanked and got all these first round picks. And they've tried to, win a Super Bowl real fast, get good real fast. And it's always went belly up. But for this off season, this is a pretty solid off season for them, and I probably the best one I've seen them have in my lifetime of following the NFL.
Yeah, and I mean, just look at some of these defensive players that they picked up. I mean, they got Malik Reed, they got your boy Deshaun Elliott.
Yeah,
we got David Long Jr. here, and then offensively, our special teams, they've got. They got Braxton Berrios. So they stole a couple of players from the Jets to make themselves better and try to weaken a division opponent.
Yes, they did.
And so, this is what's happening right now with the Dolphins. As we move on here, I want to move on to the Washington Commanders. And let's make sure we can get this to work again. I think the Washington Commanders have really improved themselves this offseason. When you see this list of, free agents that they have added this season, it's unbelievable, that they can, really remake their team They still re-signed a couple of players. They got their franchise guy in Deron Payne back. But, you've got Tyler Lawson was re-signed. Khalid Hudson, F.A. Aboda, two defensive players that were really good for them this last year. And then it looks like they're going to be turning to Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. And he has been solid in the places that he has been. It just feels like he's never had a complete team around him. Washington is this same kind of team. Not necessarily a complete team around him, but they're adding pieces. New offensive coordinator in Eric Bieniemy. They bring over Marcus Kemp and Andrew Wiley from the Kansas City Chiefs. And, when you look at, and I'm taking a quick peek here, when you look at what Washington has done here this offseason, look at the defensive players they brought in. Abdullah Anderson on the line. Linebackers in Cody Barton and Anthony Nelson. Cameron Danzler and Danny Johnson in the defensive backfield. Offensive line, okay? They're strengthening their lines. They're working on building up the defense. They bring in Eric Bieniemy. I think they found their running game last year. They've got a two-headed running game now that Brian Robinson is there. And, they have Terry McLaughlin at wide receiver. I think that, depending on what they do in the draft with this team, the entire NFC East is going to be the beasts of the East again this season.
Yeah, because they hung around in their division all year. They were right there in the playoff hunt all season. And they're gonna be right back. Jacoby Brissett, I think I don't know if he's a step up. See, I'm not a big Tyler Higbee fan, but I felt like that kid has came in for the Washington Commanders multiple times for multiple years now, and he's played pretty solid. I think it's kind of crazy that they really went away from him because it seemed like the team really did embrace him as the QB. But I think Joey Brissett, if he plays like he did with Cleveland, because he played halfway decent now. He didn't play total trash with Cleveland. They were just out of sync all year. And I think it's a lot to do with off the field issues going around with the new quarterback and all. But he got a chance to take a team that was very close to the playoffs. If he can upgrade that position and play good and through the year, I don't see why Washington couldn't sneak into the wild card. Washington could just be just as good as the Giants this year. They were right there with them. I think Dallas actually, I don't know how Dallas is really going to turn out this year. I don't think Dallas is that team that everybody thinks they are. I think Dallas is on paper looks like a great team, but in reality, there's a lot of falls in Dallas. So I think Washington Commanders, with all their players they kept, the players they brought in, I think they got a legit chance at a wild card shot in the playoffs this year. And they're Dallas is going to have to watch out. I think Dallas in the whole division's the one that you got to watch out for falling. I think the Giants could easily win the division, or not the division, but not the Giants, but the Eagles. And I believe
I'm concerned about the Eagles. We talked about them before and the losses that they have taken in free agency. Now they picked up some players, but they are not the players that they had before. Slay is gone. He went back to Detroit, or not Slay, but C.J. Gardner-Johnson went to Detroit. They lost their main running back in Miles Sanders, who went to Carolina. They lost, one of their best offensive linemen went to Pittsburgh, who we're going to talk about next. So you've got a lot of players that were on that team that have been poached by these other teams because Philadelphia just didn't have the salary cap space. I'm afraid, that Philadelphia shot their load this year. They got to the Super Bowl, but they didn't win it. And everybody has defected because they're going to get paid.
Yeah. I mean, we've all seen it. We've all seen, Super Bowl teams lose players, but that is a factor. They lost a lot of players really fast. I mean, I still think they're the best team in the East, though. I mean, Dallas ain't it. Can you put the Giants over the Eagles?
I think you're underestimating Dallas. Dallas was right there with them at the end of the season. Dallas went toe-to-toe with San Francisco when they had their quarterback in Purdy. And I think that if they make certain adjustments, both offensively and defensively, of course, they're going to have McCarthy calling the plays this year, so that'll be a little bit of a change. They're not going to be held back by having a step slow running back in Ezekiel Elliott. So their running game should be even more improved. And I expect, they got T.Y. Hilton. They traded for, it's eluding me right now. I know they traded for Gilmore, but they also traded for, let me find it here. I got it on my sheet somewhere here.
They traded for Brandon Cooks too, didn't they?
Brandon Cooks, that's who I was trying to think of. So they traded for Brandon Cooks. Okay, so you got Cooks, Gallup, Lamb. Now I know they did lose Dalton Schultz, but they've had a couple other tight ends that have been waiting in the wings. I think Schultz is a big loss offensively.
Yeah.
But he just wanted too much money, and they're up against a cap even with cutting Ezekiel Elliott. And so they got to make some smart moves. It's better to protect your quarterback. You may have to lose a weapon along the way.
See, my thing, I guess, with Dallas is I don't trust Mike McCarthy. I thought he was going to have a bounce back and be a lot better and more productive in Dallas when he got there, because I believe when he got there, he actually had a better team than he does at this moment, per se.
Right.
That hasn't happened yet. Dak still hasn't really got over his hump as yet. I mean, he can still get to that point, take him to the playoffs, but it just seems like he can't get over his hump. So I guess that's why I don't have a lot of confidence in Dallas.
Yeah.
If I seen more production, their coaching staff and as a team, back when they were in a better position, I think it'd be a little bit different. And it's hard for me to sit there right now and say Dallas is better than the Eagles. Now, Dallas could be 1-2 for sure. They could win the East. I'm not going to say they won't win the East.
Right.
I just don't have much faith in it. I think they still play second fiddle. And I think Washington could probably possibly sneak there as a wild card team.
Yeah, they're going to fight it out. They're definitely going to fight it out.
That's one thing I love watching the NFC.
All four teams in the NFC East, it's going to be like the olden days in the late 80s, early 90s, where they beat up on each other. And, when they do that, that technically, they beat each other up in the regular season to get to the playoffs. That helps these other teams sneak in.
Exactly. I'm not going to lie. Every time Dallas is playing the Giants playing the Dallas or Washington Eagles, whatever the case be, I like tuning into the NFC East games because they're usually pretty good, and the rivalries are legit in that division. So it makes a good game. So I'm definitely going to be watching a lot of primetime games that they get to play in this year. So I know there'll probably be a few.
Yeah.
You know, okay, this is what I wanted to bring up.
Okay.
Now, I know the Commanders. There's been rumors that they're going to force the owner of the Commanders out of the league if he don't sell. I did hear a report that they said from sources that the Snyders cleaned out all their stuff out of their offices, suites,
Yep.
etc. But there's still been no updates on if the team's actually being bought at the moment or who's purchasing the team. But it sounds like
They're in
something's.
preparations.
You think it's just
According to
preparation?
Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk, they're in preparations to sell the team. There's basically two main bidders for the team, and they have to go through an investigative process with the NFL to determine who would be best to be on, like it's like being on a board of regents, you know, one of the owners. And one group is led by Jeff Bezos. Of course, he's, you know, the owner of Amazon. And then there is another group which I'm unfamiliar with, but that group has Magic Johnson as part of their bid. And so, you know, you got some big names out there that are interested in doing this. And if Washington can get sold and they can finally get Daniel Snyder out of the league, you're looking at a situation where sponsors and, you know, government money, state money, etc., it will be willing to help them build a new stadium. They'll get the financing for that. You know, of course, every franchise wants to have the most up-to-date and wonderful, luxurious stadiums, so they can charge that high money for the attendance and the skyboxes and the personal seat licenses, and you know, you get a bunch of sponsorships and everything. I've heard that the one thing of interest to me is that there is a possibility, and we've gone through a couple of iterations here since they were the Washington Redskins. They're the Washington football team, and now they're the Washington Commanders, that there still may be a name change in the future for the franchise because the fans are not happy with what was selected. They would have been happy with Warriors or Red Wolves, or, you know, there's a lot of different things that could have been. You know, they could have kept a lot of that team heritage together if they'd have just called them the Warriors. You know, they could have had the feather hanging down. They didn't need the face. They could have just had, like, there was a time that they had something similar to the Florida State Seminoles logo, where it's like an arrow with some feathers on it.
Yeah.
That would not, you know, denigrate the Native American population. You keep your historical stuff intact, but, you know, you stick with the theme that the team has always been with.
See, that's a hard thing for me because I still think they should be called the Redskins. I see nothing wrong with the name. And,
right.
And I don't want to offend nobody because, to me, if anything, I understand the history. Trust me. You know, cool short story. My grandparents used to live in Tennessee, and they actually owned a piece of the Trails of the Tears. They had it running right alongside their property. So it was cool to have, you know, that historic, growing up as a kid, finding artifacts that was left there from, you know, years and years. So to me, how I've always looked at it, to me, that's paying respect to them. You're naming big things after them. But, you know, I totally agree. They should have definitely did their best to try to keep their heritage alive through the fan base, because if you ain't keeping your fan base happy with the names you're picking or the uniforms, you ain't making much money The big players are obviously going to sell their jerseys. Get that. I mean, you get a superstar, their jersey's going to sell. But anyways, it's the other players like the rookies and everybody else. They're not going to sell many jerseys if fans don't really want to be wearing and they're not supportive of the name. And that takes money out of everybody's pocket, not just the teams, but players get a percentage of their jerseys get sold. And that hurts these young players because people are not happy, they're not going to buy it.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of why I was talking about it, is basically that that could be something that happens when they get new ownership. But let's move on at this time. I've got queued up in our deal here the Pittsburgh Steelers. And they've made some moves this offseason. We talked about the biggest move was signing free agent Isaac Seumalo, the guard from the Philadelphia Eagles. They paid some big money to get him to come over to them. They also picked up, and this I didn't mention when we talked about Washington, Washington's best linebacker was Cole Holcomb. He comes over to Pittsburgh in this move. Patrick Peterson, big time, he's been a Pro Bowler, coming off a great year in Minnesota, and he's going to strengthen that secondary. That's why they felt so comfortable in letting Sutton go to the Lions. And then offensively, they re-signed DeMonte Casey, tight end Zach Gentry, and, some other players there that's on the list. But, this is what Pittsburgh has done. They're looking to catch up in the division, because it feels like it's kind of like a three-headed race right now. As long as Lamar Jackson is not under contract, Baltimore is at the bottom. Cleveland's on the upcome. Kenny Pickett and the Steelers are on the upcome. And Cincinnati's the team to beat in the division.
Yeah. The Steelers, I think, are going to be better than they were last year. I still don't think Coach Tomlin's going to have a losing record this year either. But I'm not ready to say that they'll make the playoffs this year. I still think Pickett might need a full season as a QB before he's ready, before he can take that step. He looked decent at times, but made a lot of mistakes as well as being a rookie quarterback. So I think it might take him at least another full year. But I still think, they're going to be a tough team. I think they're going to be a team that you can't leave hanging around, for that matter. Because I believe if you let them hang around for too long, they can still win from you pretty fast. Because their defense hasn't fell off that tremendously. They've added some nice players. Their offense is not that horrible, just like I said, just a young QB play. So depending on where Kenny Pickett is at by the season starts, that's going to be determined on how good Lamar Jackson's going to be. Or not Lamar Jackson, but how the Steelers are going to be this season.
Yeah, well, for me, I look at this team, and I remember that the longer the season went, the better Pickett played. I like what they've got at wide receiver in Deontay Johnson. I like what they've got in, they've got Pickens. George Pickens was picked last year. Now, they traded away Chase Claypool to Chicago, during midseason last year. And I think one of the reasons why they did that is he was kind of becoming a malcontent. He wasn't getting the ball as often as he thought he should have. He's one of those wide receivers. Give me the ball, give me the ball, give me the ball. And they try to get it to him, but he's double covered, or he would drop the passes. He was just out of sync last year with his rookie quarterback. But, this team, I think, is going to get back to a lot of what their roots are. Running the football, playing great defense, and they're going to bring Kenny Pickett along, and he showed a lot of promise this last year. He's no Ben Roethlisberger, don't get me wrong, okay? But I think that they feel real positive about him moving forward, and I like Pittsburgh to challenge in this division because I think Cincinnati got weaker this offseason.
Yeah. I mean, their division is going to be something to watch for, especially if Baltimore don't have Lamar Jackson. They could easily possibly move up. What do you call it? They could easily be in the playoff hunt. It depends on where Baltimore goes. Cincinnati, I still think Cincinnati's going to run that division. I still think they're the team to beat. And, I'm excited to see how Kenny Pickett comes out this year. I don't think the kid's going to be a bad quarterback. He did get better by the end of the year. I just personally think, I'm not ready to commit at this time. They'll be legit playoff contenders because I never like to commit too early in a young QB's career, if that makes sense.
Sure.
But I mean, depending on where the division goes, because I got to see a lot from Cleveland. Deshaun Watson didn't play for 18 months. So it's 2 years pretty much. So in that case, I don't know where they're at as a team. I don't know where Deshaun Watson's at. I know we got to see him a little bit of them last season, but it wasn't much. And so, I mean, it really plays out that, the Steelers could be the underdog Cinderella story in that division and shake things up because Cleveland, I think, is still probably a little out of it. I think unless Deshaun is ready to play and back to where he used to be, but, missing 2 years of football, I still think that might take some time for him to even get to his level. So that's just a division all around to really pay attention because It could either be really good or it could be a really bad division and Cincinnati could just run away with it. I mean, it has the chances. I mean, for the Steelers fan and Kenny Pickett's fans, I hope that's not the case. I do respect Mike Tomlin as a head coach. I actually really like him as a head coach because to me as a head coach, that's hard to do to have even to rebuild years. You still not have had a losing record. I mean, that I think of all coaches, that has to speak a lot of volume.
Well, you got to have good players to go with it. It's not just a coach, but he's got good players also. And he's had most of that time was, Ben Roethlisberger was the quarterback. And so you had a franchise quarterback leading your team. They always stuck, with the running game and tried to, make it as balanced as possible. But the running game's been a little lean for several years. But I really like Najee Harris. And I think if they gave the ball a little bit more to Benny Snell as his backup, them two there could be a nice combination going forward. And he's got the weapons at wide receiver and tight end to get the ball down the field. The defense is going to play lights out, led by TJ Watt. I still think that, like you said, Cincinnati's probably still the best team in that division. But when it all comes down to it, I think that they're going to definitely challenge for a wild card spot.
You think so?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, yeah, they can for sure hit the wild card spot. I mean, it's that for sure. There's no questions about it. They can for sure hit it. I'm waiting. I'm curious. I'm actually excited to see Kenny Pickett though this year. He's one of the young QBs that I didn't get to watch too much of for some reason. I didn't have a lot of Steeler games on throughout the season, and then I didn't have Prime for Thursday night games either. So, but I got Prime this year, so I'm not worried about it. I won't miss a game.
Right.
I just hope
get your Prime Video in so you make sure you don't miss your Thursday night games. Speaking of the Thursday night games, I'm not sure what happened with the vote, but I haven't heard whether it passed or not. But they're looking into later in the season doing some shifting, doing some flex scheduling for the Thursday night games to make sure that they are quality matchups during the Thursday night, broadcast. And I actually hope that does pass.
I hope so too, because because I thought they lost a lot of money on games on Thursday night because it was like almost every Thursday night game they had on, for some odd reason, they were all just bad teams. And I hope they made Amazon get some better cameras too. Because the few games I watched before I lost Prime last season, the quality of the video wasn't as good as Fox and the other networks. So to me, it's like I look at that like I'm not trying to watch a bad pitcher game all the time. So if you're going to stream games live, that's fine, but you gotta make sure you make it quality. I think
right.
I think that's what hurt them a lot too. But I'm definitely excited. I'm 100% with you. I want that rule to pass because I'd rather have good Thursday night games. And hey, Ron, Ron said he likes the flex of games because the Lions could have been on Thursdays. You're 100% right. I feel like every primetime game should be honestly a flex. I would be okay.
And that's what they're looking at. I mean, we had some flex. I know we had some flex. We've had flex Sunday, but I think didn't they start flex Monday this last year? I think they had a couple of flex Monday. If they didn't, I know they're starting it this year because they voted on it and it's going to happen.
Yeah, they should.
They had flex Sunday. They're going to flex Mondays. The later in the year, it's got to get past like week 6, and then they can decide, whether they're going to do any flexing. The first 5-6 weeks of the season are all set in stone, and then after that, then it turns into flex time. Yeah. And then Thursday nights will be the same thing. But, for the most part, they're trying to make sure that every team plays at least one Thursday night game. That's what has generally been the program that they have set forth. And usually it's a divisional matchup. That way they know that, it's going to, those teams know each other. They don't have to study as hard to be prepared on short notice to play. But, there was a couple of duds in there this last year for sure.
I would like it. I think they should. And I want them to get better on picking primetime games, period. And I understand this, so if So don't bite my head off. It's not just because I'm a Lions fan, but I like the Lions. The Lions hardly, I mean, don't get me wrong, we do get picked for Monday nights, but not even close as amount of other teams do. And I know there's a lot of teams like us who don't. And I understand if we're a bad team, don't put us on primetime, which I don't think we'll have that problem this year because I think Detroit could be one of the teams that get a lot of primetime games this season. I just feel like the whole NFL, from top to the shows to ESPN, NFL Network, are really fascinated about the Lions and Dan Campbell. So I believe we'll see that this season. But some of these teams that, even if they've been bad over the years, should still get a chance. Now, if they're bad and playing crappy football, flex them the hell out. I won't be mad at you at that by any means. But at least let's at least make it even matchups on primetime games. Because you get, say like okay, for instance, say Jacksonville. Jacksonville don't get too many Monday night games. You think, what I mean, young team, now they got national TV pressure. They don't have much experience, playing in those situations, if that makes any sense, But the team they play, I guarantee, has more Monday Night Football games than they do.
Right.
So to me, all that makes a difference in football because, if it's Sunday, you got 5 other games going on, it's not too much. You're the only game on TV and everybody's going to watch you, in the back of your mind, that sits in the back of your mind as a player. I think as any kind of person, it's just a normal thing, because you make one mistake, everybody sees it. Now, have you heard any rumors? I know some teams. I know the Lions put in for an extra challenge.
Do what now? Oh, yeah, an extra challenge?
Yeah. I thought that was a good rule proposed, but I haven't heard nothing if that got voted in or
they had a whole list of different rules that they were looking at that was added by the competition committee for them to to vote on and discuss. But the one main one that they did not have, that a lot of people were not happy with, was the push the quarterback, where you get it like 3 or 4 guys pushing the quarterback like the Eagles were doing in the Super Bowl. That's an unstoppable play. It's a scrum. Somebody's bound to get hurt. And they talk about all the time about player safety, but I guess they didn't think that they'd get enough votes in order to be able to pass that. And so they just decided not to put it to a vote. And so, no, I didn't hear about that. I heard about a few others. I know that a couple of teams proposed the XFL 4th and 15 alternate onside kick play, where if you get a first down on 4th and 15 from your own 25, then, you get to keep the ball. But I don't know that any of those have passed yet. I think they're all deliberating on them right now, and we'll hear more about what passed and what didn't pass later on.
What's up, Money Minneapolis? He's a Vikings fan. How you doing? Thank you for joining the stream tonight.
Perfect timing. Let's talk about the Minnesota Vikings. Let me find them here.
Ron said he don't mind pushing the quarterback. It's football. I think changing some of the penalties would be good.
Well, I think to be honest, I think that the whole pushing them, it's more like rugby. I can see the benefits to it. I would have no problem with doing it to any player other than a quarterback, because I think if you do it to a quarterback, he's a smaller player. He's bound to get hurt. He's going to get stepped on, pushed around, 700 pounds of beef running into your multi-million-dollar, guy. You don't want him getting injured.
Yeah. I mean, if teams are willing to do it, I don't see a problem with it. I don't care if they leave it. I thought it was a fair play, but I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I see your concern. What up, Nathan? How you doing, buddy? Thank you for tuning into the stream. Ron said it should be coaching decisions, or the coaching decision. I mean, I mean, if teams want to push the quarterback and take the chance of getting them hurt, that's their call. I don't think it changes the game. Your D line just needs to be ready for it. Make sure they clog up the middle.
Right. I know there's a couple of coaches that are looking forward to using it to their advantage. Sean Payton mentioned it on FS1 when he was talking to Colin Cowherd. He said, I'll damn sure take advantage of that. We could get 2 to 3 yards of play on that. We'll keep the chains moving on practically every drive. As long as our defense holds its water, we're going to make some scores. And so, I know that they're going to use that. But, you're talking to, a Minnesota Viking fan there. I can see the comments now, by the way. Hi, Nathaniel Frames. Good to see you, buddy. He's a Green Bay Packer fan. Let's look at the Vikings and what they've done so far this offseason. They have released or lost in free agency. Eric Kendricks, the linebacker, went to the Chargers. Patrick Peterson, of course, went to Pittsburgh. We just talked about him. Adam Thielen signed with the Carolina Panthers. And Cameron Dantzler, ended up signing with the Washington football team, I believe. Or am I wrong on that? I'm saying the wrong team. I don't remember. Anyway, I can tell you that as a Viking fan, I'm okay with the loss of Adam Thielen. And the reason why is because it felt like he just couldn't get open like he used to be able to. You got Justin Jefferson, who's getting the double coverage. Adam Thielen should have been able to get open. They had to start putting him in the slot. KJ Osborne turned into the number 2 receiver on the team. And so, a lot of people are thinking he's going to be the number 1 receiver in Carolina, but I think that they're going to be in for a rude awakening. I think he'll be a good slot player for them. But unless he, makes some changes, maybe does some different training in the offseason, I don't see him being the kind of big play receiver that he has been in the past. They re-signed Alexander Matt, which I think is a good thing. He had talked in a previous podcast about the possibility that the team was going to trade Dalvin Cook because they are having such a hard time with the salary cap. But based on some of the players that they released and lost, some players that they ended up having to re-sign at lower figures or brought in, they ended up getting themselves a little bit of salary cap space. I think they restructured some contracts. I like the signing of Marcus Davenport from the New Orleans Saints to come in as a pass rusher. Troy Reeder at linebacker. He was probably the second best linebacker that the Chargers had. And Byron Murphy at corner, I think that'll help out a lot in the secondary. I hate to see Patrick Peterson go. I thought he had a great season. Oh, yeah, Ron, big quarterbacks would, benefit from having players pushing them to get those first downs. But, there are some smaller, frailer quarterbacks. And I won't lie, look what happened to Patrick Mahomes on a simple quarterback sneak, when they played the Denver Broncos the first year they won the Super Bowl. His kneecap was in his calf.
Yeah.
It's a miracle that he was able to come back and play the rest of that season. And you look at some of these guys, you damn sure don't want Tua doing that. You get a 300-pound dude jumping over the top, running into him, he gets concussed, he's done. So I mean, we could talk about the whole pushing of the quarterback situation probably till we're blue in the face. But what do you think of the moves that the Vikings have made here?
I mean,
Yes.
for the situation they're in with being right at the cap, I believe they lost a lot of, maybe not all key players, but a big part of their team. But I also feel like, they've kept a couple players that, were like Harrison Smith. He was projected to get cut. They managed to work a deal out and keep him. So I think that's huge for them. They did add some players. But I still think they went back a little bit from where they were a year before. But I still think they're going to be they're going to still battle in the North. They're not going to be a pushover team, but I think they've actually gotten a little worse than they were last year. So at this point, we're just got to see what they do in the draft and see how they come out in the season. Because they were first last year, I could see him being third. I could see him possibly being third this year if Justin Fields in Chicago makes the jump. They've had a lot of big free agents. We've already discussed Chicago's moves on the show multiple times now. So you can't write Chicago off yet. So I still think it's Detroit's division, but Minnesota could either be right there battling for the division, or they could fall back and be just battling for a wild card spot.
Well, like I said on Thursday night when we talked about the team, I think that the addition of Brian Flores on the defensive side as the defensive coordinator, some of the moves that they have had to make because of salary cap, I think is, a chance for some younger players to step in. Now, they did restructure and re-sign Harrison Smith in the secondary. I like the pickup of Byron Murphy. I like Marcus Davenport. I think the defense will actually be much better, especially under Flores being the coordinator. Offensively, they were really good last year. I think if they can keep their running game intact, then they're going to challenge for the division. They're definitely going to be in the thick of the wild card hunt. I don't expect at this point that they're going to trade Dalvin Cook. I would be surprised if they did. But if they do, then that'll elevate Alexander Madison, who just re-signed with the team, to the starter, and they'll probably draft him another running back in the draft.
Yeah. No, I'm not, with the new defensive coordinator, I do think they'll be better at defense myself. But, I'm not ready to say fighting for the division yet. I got to see how they come out. Sure. Just because, they lost some key players. But, it's still early. So, you could technically say every team has a shot at the division if you really want to say it.
Right.
I mean, they're definitely going to be there. They're definitely going to be a tough opponent. You know, I'm not going to sleep on them, but I think it's just I want to know to the point if they don't say, since you're a Viking fan, you might be able to answer. Is this the year for Kirk Cousins to make it or break it? Do you think if he don't really do something there this year, that maybe next year his job could be on the line?
I don't think so. I mean, everybody looks towards Kirk Cousins as not being clutch, and Kirk Cousins is at fault when things go wrong. But when you look at statistics, don't lie. The guy is a good quarterback. He's got good weapons. He had no defense last year. The defense was like 30th in the league. Okay. When you give up that many yards and you give up that many points and you can't stop anybody, that's a lot of pressure to have to score. And they just, no team can score every single time. And, I'm not against Kirk Cousins. I still think he's got some positive years left. I don't want to break the bank going forward, but, I don't think that we are building a team that's going to finish bad enough to draft high enough in the draft to get us a bona fide future franchise quarterback. I mean, unless we decide we're going to trade up, I think they've got like maybe one more year on Kirk Cousins' deal, and this may be the last of his contract, but that doesn't mean that they can't franchise him going forward if they don't have a solution going, with what they're going to do next year.
Oh, I totally understand. I get that. I'm just always curious because I know Kirk Cousins is not a trash QB. He's a decent QB. I mean, me personally, I wouldn't want him really be my QB because I don't like him like that. But I'm not going to trash the man.
Right.
I mean, he's won divisions. He's made the playoffs. He might not be the best on primetime games, but he's put teams in playoffs. And mind you, we've all seen Washington without Kirk Cousins, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Have they made some noise? They've made some Cinderella noise. Let's be honest. This year might be the most legit year that you wouldn't call Cinderella.
Yeah.
Because they do have a good squad foreman in Washington now. The only question is how the QB play is going to end up being there this season. But other than that, I mean, before last year, after Kirk Cousins left, Washington hasn't done much. I mean, unfortunately, they thought Alex Smith would be the savior.
And he started to be that way. I think he went like 5-1 in his 6 starts.
And then
he got hurt, and it took him like 2 years before he could come back. And then he was a winner again, but he was having problems with his legs. He proved to people he could do it, but he knew that once he came back, that was going to be the end of it for him. They did accomplish some things with Taylor Heineke, and speaking of Taylor Heineke, our next team, our final spotlighted team, is the Atlanta Falcons. And I think they made a smart move bringing him in. They have Desmond Ridder, who they drafted last season, but in the spot duty that he had, I was not impressed. And you're in a division that is definitely up for grabs. You've got Tampa Bay bringing in Baker Mayfield, but that's a sieve. All the free agents have basically, running away from Tampa now that Brady's not there. Now, New Orleans is loading up. Carolina is loading up. And this is what Atlanta has done. Jonnu Smith used to play for the head coach when he was the offensive coordinator there in Tennessee. Jonnu went to New England for a couple of seasons. Now he's going to be reunited with Arthur Smith, so he knows the offense, and he'll tag team with Kyle Pitts at the tight end position. That'll give some safety blankets down the field for whoever plays quarterback. I think it'll be an open competition between Heineke and Ritter, and it'll be, it will not reflect negatively on Ritter if he doesn't win the starting job right away, coming into the season. Taylor's got a lot more experience. He's played in multiple leagues. He's been a starter, and I think that this is a good landing spot for him here in Atlanta. He has some weapons to throw the ball to. You can see that they picked up Mac Hollins from the Raiders. They re-signed a couple of their best offensive linemen in Chris Lindstrom and Jermaine Ifedi. I like them, keeping Lorenzo Carter and Cornell Armstrong. Those guys were key parts of their defense, which played well from time to time. But, it didn't set the house on fire or nothing. And that's why they added Jesse Bates and Mike Hughes to the secondary. I like Tay Davis and Caden Ellis coming in at linebacker. I think they're another team. It just depends on how they execute, what their schedule looks like, how well the other teams in their division come out of the gate will determine whether or not Atlanta has a shot to win the NFC South, which is kind of up in the air right now. What do you think, buddy? Do you like what Atlanta has done?
So my question, you really think Tyler Heineke is going to be the starter?
Yes. I mean, simple as that. I told you I did not like what I saw out of Desmond Ritter last year. Marcus Mariota basically gave up on the team. I don't know if he was injured or if it was a situation where they wanted to see what the rookie had, and maybe they threw him in against some of the wrong teams. Tampa's defense, New Orleans' defense, they're going to get after a rookie quarterback, and it may not have been an ideal situation for him to be playing against those teams early on. He might have needed some more seasoning. Now, he's going to have a full offseason here, and maybe he is, been named the starter already, and they're not going to have a quarterback competition. But I think that they would be smart to do so. I think that Heineke can come in. He can right the ship, as it were, get things straightened out, get things rolling, and then they can bring Ritter in once everything starts going a little better, so he feels protected, so he feels like he's got a running game behind him. Austin Eckler, might be a target for them in a trade. Eckler's looking to be traded away from the Chargers. This is the main team that I have heard that might be interested in him from the NFC. And so, if they bring him in to do that, there's another weapon for him going forward in this wide open division.
I'm kind of curious to see if he's going to be a starter, and I kind of agree with you. It kind of makes sense why they would go out and sign him. But Atlanta was a surprising team, even though they went into a rebuilding year. Last 2 years, they were one of those teams like the Lions that had a chance right there. They came alive right at the end, and had a slight chance to sneak in there into the playoffs. I like their team. They got a young team. Their offense is pretty good. Their defense is really good too. Cordell Patterson, it seemed like he's found a true home And if he can stay healthy for him this season, and you got Tyler that can, he can sling the ball, man. And you got a healthy Patterson in the backfield that you can pass the ball or hand the ball to. I think and like you said, they're in a weak division. Right now you could honestly make a case right now because Tennessee's going to trade Henry. Soon as if that happens, Tennessee loses their identity. So, and the Colts, I don't truly know who's playing quarterback yet. I don't think really no one knows. It's kind of up in the air.
Minshew.
But I feel like, okay, yeah, that's right. They did sign Minshew, but I'm not confident in his play. He's had multiple opportunities, in Jacksonville, and he's with other teams, and nothing's really came of it. So I still think they draft a QB. So I don't really see the Colts really doing much this season. I don't think they'll be total garbage, if that makes sense. But depending on that QB play is where they're going to be at this year, and the Colts. So you can make an arguable case that Atlanta could be the Cinderella of this division and win it.
The Colts, first of all, are in the AFC. Okay, they're not in the NFC.
See, I always mix them up.
Something that you brought up that I hadn't thought of until just now, okay, is Arthur Smith was the offensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans before he became the head coach in Atlanta. Now, I know they've got Cordarrelle Patterson there right now as both a wide receiver, kind of a slash at running back. But do they have the salary cap to maybe trade for Derrick Henry, who will know the system? Okay, they can feature him, but they can still use CP in the backfield, and between the two of them, that really gives them some unique weapons, and they can hammer people with the run with Derrick Henry. They can use Cordarrelle Patterson on the sweeps and the jet sweeps and the screens and the plays out of the backfield, to do the speed stuff, and then just beat people to death with that battering ram that's Derrick Henry. And maybe that'd be a nice NFC landing spot for him. We talked about Buffalo in the AFC, but if Tennessee doesn't want to trade him to the AFC where they might have to face him and he'll be an obstacle for them to make the playoffs, if they decide to trade him to the NFC, Atlanta might be a nice soft landing for him.
I like the way you think. That would be a scary backfield to have to play on defense. I'm not gonna lie. You got Henry that is going to pound it up the middle, can run it outside. You got CB that can come in there and catch the ball and do a lot of other things. I mean, you would make the job easy on Tyler or Riddler, depending on who's the starter, to be honest. Yeah. You would set up your quarterback.
Well, I've got a few items here that caught my eye during the week that I wanted to mention. And then I'm going to show you something here when it comes to, the draft that's up and coming. The first thing I have is your guy, DJ Chark, decided to join the Carolina Panthers. And while they have, we talked about Adam Thielen earlier in the broadcast, going from Minnesota to there, and he might be the number one guy. I think it's more likely DJ Chark is going to be the number one receiver in Carolina. I saw that Nelson Aguilar signed with the Baltimore Ravens. That gives them another receiving threat. He is a nice possession receiver, but he does have the speed from time to time to turn it on and take it the distance. And when I see him getting added to the Baltimore Ravens team, that's another indication to me that Baltimore might be looking to move on from Lamar. The Panthers traded a kicker, Zane Gonzalez, to San Francisco, and I think that officially ends Robbie Gould being the kicker in San Francisco. He's a free agent. He decided not to re-sign with San Francisco because they didn't want to offer him the kind of money he thought he was worth. He is still out on the market right now, but I think that pretty much ends, his reign as the kicker for San Francisco. And then I'm going to give you this week my top 5 picks in the upcoming NFL draft. I ran a little mock scenario for myself with the top 5 picks, and this is important because of what I think is, the quarterbacks that are going to be picked early on. They had C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young and Will Levis and Anthony Richardson all had their pro days this last week. And a lot of people were throwing out what Dan Patrick called verbal bouquets to all these guys. And I've said from the beginning, I think it's C.J. Stroud. And when I ran the scenario, looky, C.J. Stroud went to the Carolina Panthers. And so right now, they've got C.J. Stroud going to Carolina. I've got Bryce Young going to the Houston Texans. Will Anderson will be going to Arizona. They're going to go ahead and pick up Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis because they're going to start Gardner Minshew, this season. He knows the system. Shane Steichen comes over, offensive coordinator from the Philadelphia Eagles, and he'll be the starter early on while they season Anthony Richardson. He might sit for a season. This could be one of those Gardner Minshew pretends to be Alex Smith. Anthony Richardson is Patrick Mahomes. He sits for the season and learns at the foot of somebody and bring him in to be the starter going forward next year. Rounding out the top 5 is Tyree Wilson, the edge rusher from Texas Tech, goes to Seattle. And what do you think of the top 5 picks that, as I have them as of right now? No Will Levis in the top 5 at quarterback, and I really liked him when I seen him at the combine.
I think you're right on. I think 1 and 2 is going to be CJ or Bryce. Either way, I think Carolina might go Bruce over CJ. That's it, but CJ Stroud as well. I think it's a toss-up. I think it's hard to commit on because, Bryce Young was all hyped up. CJ Stroud was hyped, but I feel like he hasn't really got hyped up to be the true number 1 until the last couple weeks. Because before that, it was always Young that was going to be, he's the best QB in his draft class. That was hyped up for the last probably year and a half. But I can see Carolina going CJ Stroud just for the fact that similar play style to Cam Newton. He'll definitely fit their team scheme. And I think you're about right. I think Anthony Richardson don't look like a bad QB. Does he probably need to sit behind, sit for a year and learn the system? Yes. And I think that could be a good pick for the Colts. If and then I figured I think you're right on the 3 and 5 for sure. And I wouldn't, and David, you know me, I keep it real. I wouldn't be surprised if this turns out to be right. I mean, it's so hard to pick. I love watching mock drafts. I love, trying to figure out where these players are going to go. But it's hard to be right, and when you're right, it feels good. So,
Yeah.
so just for our sake, for the show's sake, I'm hoping you are right, because it shows we do our homework.
Well, I tell you, I'm looking forward to what happens here in the next couple of weeks. They're holding the draft in Kansas City. I've thought about going up there here from Wichita. I'm probably not going to go just because I've got my kids now, and just wrong time of the year. Here in Wichita, the radio station holds a draft party at one of the local bars and grills. And we did, I think it was Side Pockets or something here, which is like a billiards place also here in town this last year. And I get together with Mr. Johansson, Mr. Tim Johansson, who's a friend of mine. He actually was my 7th grade science teacher, believe it or not. And his friend Dean and another friend of his. And we compete for prizes and stuff. I don't know if other local radio stations do this or not, but we compete to pick who's gonna go to who and what team and so I get a bunch of stuff all ready to go and write it all down and be like, okay, here's who Mel Kiper Jr. thought was going to be, the top first round guys, and here's who Daniel Jeremiah said was going to these teams. And then we could use that, to help decipher, because they call your name randomly and they're like, okay, come up here. You're picking for whichever team. Who are they taking? And if you don't know anything, so this is for real football fans,
Yeah.
So last year we won some barbecue sauce, big, huge barbecue sauce bottles, got some gift certificates to some local eating establishments here in town. And I'm looking forward to doing that again the first night of the draft. But I told the other guys, I said, on the weekend, Friday and Saturday, I said, I might run up there just for the experience of being at an NFL draft one time.
I know 2024, it's Detroit. They already got the signs out. I'm not sure if I'm going to go, just depending on how packed it is.
Oh, it's going to be packed. If you see it on TV, you can see all of the people that are there. They're all mashed in there, and you got to have a wristband that's a certain color to get to a certain section closest to the stage. And the brighter the wristband, the more money you pay to get closer, or something like that.
Yeah. I'm just waiting to see how much it's all going to cost, to be 100% honest.
Right.
I do like watching the draft. So it's kind of hard. Like, do I want to be there and not be able to physically watch it?
Listen in on what's happening. Right.
Exactly. And so I'm playing it by ear, because like the Lions Stadium is maybe 10 minutes from my house, 10-15-minute drive, literally. So I mean, it wouldn't take me nothing to get down there, to get home. So I want to, so it just really all depends. I want to see how it's set up, because it would be cool to experience that. So I totally understand what you're saying. And especially, I guess I probably should just go since I only got a 10-minute drive to it. You know, like you would have to drive the whole, the whole
Couple hours.
couple
It's a couple
hours.
hours away.
So I'm over here debating about it. And I'm like, now I'm thinking, I'm only 20 minutes away. 10 minutes away actually, on a good day. But with probably the traffic in downtown is gonna take. Let's be honest, it'll take about a half hour.
Well, listen, I tell you what, I may not go this year, but when I win the lottery, I'll come to Detroit and we'll go together.
Sounds good. You're always welcome up here in Detroit.
Well, my friend, I've had a great time this weekend. I hope everybody's enjoyed the broadcast. Do you got anything else for us before we end it?
Yes, I want to make an announcement. I do plan on doing a show where I interview somebody else this week, but unfortunately, it cannot be on Tuesday this week because the plans are I will be down in Detroit at the Red Wings game. Going with my grandfather, my uncle, and there's 6 of us going. My grandpa got season tickets to the Wings. They gave him some extra tickets, so it's supposed to be. So I don't even think he's been to that game all year, this year yet. So, I'm gonna go in there, so I won't be around. So the plan is to do one on Thursday, again this week.
Okay.
I'm not sure who the guest is going to be, but I'm going to start working on that as we speak.
Come on, Carolina person. We want to talk about Carolina.
I'm looking for a Carolina fan. I do have one lined up, but I know he's really busy with work. So it might have to be like a special Saturday edition, maybe. I did know he did say his schedule is lighting up after this week, because I know he had some things going on with his kids as well. So I do want to say this. If you watch the show to this point and you see this announcement, if you like our show and want to be a part of it for an episode to talk your team, feel free and message me or even David. It could be either one of us. Let one of us know, and we'll get you on. We'll set you up, and we'll strictly talk your team. I'll ask you questions. You talk what you think. It's always fun to have a good conversation. I love talking to new fans, and that's what I want to try to do with this broadcast. Like me and David, we go in depth on Sundays. Another week, I want to reach out to your fans, the fans, and let the real fans talk. I love broadcasters. I follow them all too. But the one thing that stinks, it's always, somebody getting paid, somebody famous on these broadcasts. And you don't see too many broadcasters that offer it to real general football fans. And that's what I want to do. That's why one of the reasons why I started this, because I'm not getting paid, Dave's not getting paid. We're doing this for the love of our fan, of being fans of the league. So, and also we want to do a mock draft with everybody. We still need some people. We still need people. So get with us and sign up.
I have posted on several different pages, NFL Renegades, Pigskin People, Football Unleashed, Average Joes, okay? All of those places, if you are not a fan of the Kansas City Chiefs, post who your team is. We want to hear who you root for. We're looking for an Arizona Cardinal fan, a Colt fan, a Texan fan, a Falcon fan, guys that are all at the top of the draft, okay? But we're looking for everyone in general. We want to be able to get a hold of you. We want to be able to talk to you on Facebook real quick, message you. If we have to call you on the phone, that's fine. We want to ask you, who do you want to take? Who do you want your team to select when it's time for your team to pick in the draft? If you tell us offline, we're going to make these picks. And when we're all done, we're going to present the 4th and Goal Sports mock draft right here on the Sunday Spectacular. We'll tell them what your name is, who you picked, and for which team the entire first round of the NFL draft. And then we'll see when the draft actually occurs how close everybody got.
I got a comment for you. Hang on. So Ron said, let's see.
This is why he loves the podcast. It's just us football fans. I don't care who your team is. I believe in that. We both do.
He also said he will miss next week's show because he'll be on his way back in Vegas. But I think it would be fun for you guys to do a pre-draft, who is going to win their divisions, and then post a draft who wins their divisions and see if it changes.
We have already. I have not updated the standings since free agency began. I was going to do that, and I haven't because I haven't had the time. But I'll tell you, I can show you really fast here before we get done that I have, before free agency began, I had it's before free agency begins, what I thought the standings were going to be before the schedule was made on the timing, before the draft occurs, before free agency occurs, any of that stuff. Here is what I had before all of that, my expectations for the 2023 NFL season. Now, I expected Derek Carr to be the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. I can tell you right now, my expectations for Carolina and Atlanta are a lot higher than what they are right there. I still believe in San Francisco. I think, looking at the AFC East, I can tell you I think Miami's a couple games better. The Jets, if they get Aaron Rodgers, they're definitely a couple games better. I think that Cleveland's probably better on here. I think Baltimore's about where I think they ought to be. Jacksonville is about where they belong. I think Indianapolis is going to do real decent like that with Gardner Minshew. Tennessee, I expect Derrick Henry to get traded. Houston's rebuilding, but I think based on all of the players, and we'll probably talk about Houston next week, I think Houston is going to be better than a 4-13 year. Kansas City right now, I had them at 11-6. I'm thinking 12-5 now. Broncos better than what they have. Raiders worse than what it shows. NFC East, I just, way wrong right now on what that is. I think everybody's going to be in the thick of it, all around 9 to 10 wins. I've got Detroit just under Minnesota. I have Detroit right now probably winning the division. I still have Green Bay in the toilet, probably a worse record than what it shows. Chicago about what it is at. And I'll update this for next week so I can give you an indication of where I think everybody really stands. But this was all before free agency. This is obviously before the draft because we're before the draft now. And this is before the timing of the schedule. I know who all the teams are going to be playing, but I don't know which games are going to be in London, which game's going to be in Mexico and Germany, and who's playing on Thanksgiving. It matters if you play in prime time, compared to a 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Sunday game where the sun's going to be in the face of the opponent. Those things all matter when it comes to the schedule, and it can affect your win and loss totals.
Yep. We'll definitely update it, and we could run a whole show on it maybe after the draft. We should probably do it. Our final. But other than that, you got anything else?
That's about it. Please find the post on Renegades or on my personal page. I think it's on Chris's page.
Yep.
Tell us who your team is. Okay.
You
You don't have to do anything special in order to help us with the mock draft. Just tell us who you root for. Even if somebody else has already posted, I'm a Lions fan, I'm a Bears fan, I'm a Viking fan. It doesn't matter. We want to hear who we're talking with, who is watching the show. You know, what topics do you guys actually want us to cover? Maybe we're not covering something that you're interested in. We definitely will if you let us know.
Exactly. You know, and I'm totally open up too. If you leave a comment or even message, you know, if you want to hear us do a show on something, don't be afraid to message us or leave a comment. We check all comments, messages. Sometimes we don't get back, reply to your comments on the show. It's nothing personal. Sometimes we miss it, but we try to do it. But you know, feel free to reach out to us about anything with the show, whether you want to be a host, sign up for the draft, or you might want to see us do a show on a specific topic. We can work that topic in, you know. Other than that too is I did want to make an announcement. I don't expect anybody to do this by any means, but Facebook has gave us a notification that you can send stars to our broadcast now. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but if you choose to send stars, we appreciate it, but not asking for it because it's on you guys. I just like to have a good time.
What happens if we get stars?
Every star equals up to like 1 cent.
Woo! We're gonna be rich in no time.
So if you get 10,000 stars, it's like $100. So it's nothing. I'm just curious if it's only showing up for me or is it showing up for everybody who's watching?
It says it at the bottom. I noticed it was new, but I didn't bother to say anything when I was looking at the bottom of the comments.
Like I'm never going to ask for it because you know if we make anything on this, it's going to the stream just to get better. You know, that'll be the goal. But you know, I just thought it was cool that we made progress where it's given option for people to send stars. You know,
give us the 200. We want to pin your comment at the bottom. That'll be the comment that says, "You guys suck. Don't ever do this again. You guys are a joke. Thanks for the 200 stars to tell us we're horrible."
But all right, on that note, we're gonna end the show. It was another great Sunday. Thank you again for David showing up. I cannot wait to have you on next week. You're welcome, buddy. I always love our shows together. Other than that, you guys take care. We'll see you next week. 4th and Goal broadcast.
Thanks for joining us. See you next time.
Later, guys.